This is Austin Real Estate Investing.
Austin Real Estate Investing.
We'll be discussing real estate investing in Austin, Texas, and bringing you experts from all different sectors of the real estate game. Your host, Jordan Moorhead, is a real estate agent and investor in Austin and is here to help you get started or to build your portfolio and explore new strategies.
Hi, this is Jordan Moorhead with the Moorhead team, and this is Austin Real Estate Investing. Today we have Dave Meyer on from BiggerPockets, and he's going to tell us all about his view of the real estate market here in 2022. Hey, Dave, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Jordan.
Thank you so much for coming on. I've heard you on the BiggerPockets podcast. I don't know how many times over the years, and I really appreciate your insight into the real estate market. So real quick, tell our listeners who you are and how you're involved with real estate investing.
Yeah, so I am Dave Meyer. My official title is the Vice President of Data and Analytics at BiggerPockets. And I've served in a similar role to that for the last 6 years. But I have actually been investing in real estate for almost 12 years now. Nice. And primarily in Denver as a buy and hold investor. And I sort of fell into it somewhat accidentally and realized that I just really liked it a lot. I was enjoying it, but my full-time career had always been in data and analytics and software. And about 6 years ago, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could find a software company that also worked in real estate? And I started Googling around, found BiggerPockets. I had never heard of it before. And luckily it was about a mile away from my house, applied for a job, and that's that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been to the BiggerPockets. Well, I don't know if it's still their headquarters. As of 2018, I've been to the BiggerPockets headquarters there in Denver. So you said you accidentally fell into real estate investing. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. So I've always sort of had this entrepreneurial tilt. And, when I was growing up and needed money, and even at 13, 14 years old, I was always trying to scrape together money in entrepreneurial endeavors. And I just like to find good opportunities. And I was going skiing with a friend of mine in Denver. And this is not my smartest friend, to be honest. And I'm riding up with him. We're sitting in traffic, and he's telling me this story about how him and his girlfriend are going to buy this rental property and it's going to make all this money. And this is back in 2010 where you could find cash flowing properties in Denver. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there thinking man, this guy's kind of an idiot, but wow, he's got a pretty good idea. So I thought about it and went home and just started running the numbers. And I knew a bit about a spreadsheet even before that. And so I just went and took the plunge into it right away. I found 3 partners who helped me with the down payment on my first deal because I was waiting tables at the time. I had pretty much no money and basically worked for sweat equity. And throughout, the next couple of years, got a couple more deals around Denver. And that's how I got started. Yeah. So it's been about 12 years of doing that. And it's been an incredible experience. Learned a lot and hopefully a little bit better at this whole thing than I was when I just got started and absolutely knew nothing.
That's awesome. So I can't tell you that I've talked to a ton of people that their first deal had 3 partners either. So that's actually really impressive. I worked in the restaurant industry for a long time. I was trying to think the right way to word it. I was not the right person to be a server. So they put me in the back of the house. I was the cook and the dishwasher. I wasn't the best with my words at that age. I used to get very nervous talking to people too. So you never see it being a podcast host and a realtor now. But yeah, so you did your first deal with 3 partners and you've been doing it for 12 years, mostly in Denver. What were your next couple deals like? Were those all with partners too?
Yeah, I've done most of my deals with partners, friends and family, really, like people who I have proven over the last 10 or 12 years that I actually know what I'm doing. I haven't reached the point where I have been looking for institutional investors or, bringing in people I don't really know personally. And that's honestly just because I work a lot for BiggerPockets and I'm really passionate about my job full time and really like that job. So I have done a couple of multifamily deals, small multifamily, not commercial deals, less than 4 units or less in Denver. And now have a couple of single families in Denver. And just in 2018, did my first short-term rental and have just been doing syndication deals, investing in syndication deals, not in Austin, but in Houston, your neighbor, I guess, in Texas, and a few other places back in New York where I'm from. And just been doing that since I've been in Europe because I just didn't want to do anything active for a little while. So mostly rental property investing, but I am starting to get more active again these days. And I'm looking to just jump back into investing in a more participatory way and probably looking to find some new markets outside Denver.
That's awesome. So you are doing, can you talk about where you are and where you've been operating these rentals from? That's why I love partners. You are not in the United States right now.
That's right. I live in Amsterdam in the Netherlands.
Yeah. Truly, you can do this from anywhere, especially a lot easier if you have partners. So if you're not in Austin, you're looking to invest in Austin, for anybody listening, find a partner who's in Austin. That makes it really easy. I have a business partner. I also invest in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. I didn't pick it. Went to high school with this guy. We bought 20 houses last year. I haven't seen any of the houses. I don't know what they look like. I didn't care to know what they look like. He went and checked them all out. Having partners is so powerful and you can scale so much quicker. You also mentioned passive investing, which I'm very passionate about too. I've invested in a couple here in Texas, but you just find the right partner and find the right deal and give them the money and you get a return. So lots of great ways you can invest from wherever you are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an interesting experience, honestly, that's been really beneficial for me because prior to moving and living in Denver, I think my investing was really limited by my insistence on self-managing properties. I was doing all the handyman work and showing the properties and doing a lot of the maintenance myself. And I think it slowed down my progression as an investor, and moving forced me to find someone who can do maintenance and property management for me. And I have a great realtor in Denver who I trust to look for deals. And so that's been really interesting. And it also forced me to learn more about syndications and investing in passive real estate, which I had never even considered really prior to moving. And it's been really interesting learning experience as well. But now, given the conditions of the housing market, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, I'm much more interested in buying stuff on my own rather than doing syndications, at least for the next couple of months here.
Awesome. So yeah, let's jump right into that. So why should people invest in the housing market in 2022? There's so many reasons we're being told not to invest. So we've been in a bull market for too long. There's no way it can keep up, or you hear all this crazy stuff of the housing market's about to crash. And then you hear interest rates are about to go up. And there's just so many people shouting against investing. I know personally, I'm looking to invest as much as I can find, but of course I am. I'm a podcast host about real estate investing, and I run a real estate team focused on real estate investors. It'd be odd if I wasn't.
Right, of course. And likewise, I mean, I work for a real estate investing media and software company, but I am putting my money where my mouth is and continuing to invest as much as possible. And I think there's basically 3 different reasons why I think that investing in real estate makes so much sense. The first one is interest rates. And yes, they are going up, but interest rates in a historical context are still near all-time lows and will probably remain in a really favorable position for at least the remainder of the year. And there is a lot of news and media covering the fact that in just the last couple of weeks, we're recording this in late January, interest rates have gone up 45 or 50 basis points in the last couple of weeks. And that does make an impact on your affordability. For example, if you were to buy a house that was $400,000, that would add $70 a month to your mortgage. So it's not crazy, but it's not insignificant as well. But if you're investing for the long term, like I am, finding a loan at 3.5% is like incredibly, incredibly beneficial. And if I had to pick any one thing as why I'm trying to get as much real estate as I can right now, it's because of this. Sure, interest rates could come back down into the threes again in the future, but they've rarely been in the threes in the history of the United States. And so I want to lock in as much as that long-term debt as I can. So that's the first one. The second reason is long-term demographics. Like if you look at the shortage of housing in the United States, some people estimate it to be between 5 and 7 million housing units short of demonstrated demand. And if you know anything about economics and you know supply and demand, when supply is that severely constrained, you are going to see prices go up. And that is coupled with really strong demand. We are seeing millennials, which are the largest age group in the US, reach their peak family formation. So basically the time they all want to buy houses. And so all these people are trying to buy houses at a time where supply is severely constrained. That is another perfect condition for housing prices to go up. And then the third reason is just look at other asset classes. Like look how bad bond yields are. They're 2% right now and inflation is 5%. So you're going to put in a bond and lose 5% of your money. Like that's not an investment. If you look at the stock market and the crypto market right now, they're extremely volatile. And I should say that I invest in all of these asset classes. I'm just saying the reason I am putting most of my money into real estate right now is because those other ones are really, really uncertain. And while I do think the real estate market in the next 2 years is a little uncertain. Like we could see a flattening out of appreciation. I personally don't really think this is going to happen, but there is a scenario where prices slide backwards a little bit. But in the 5 to 10 year return, time horizon, it's a no brainer. Lock in a 3.5% interest rate. Your housing, the value of your properties are going to go up a lot in 5 to 10 year horizon. And as long as you can maintain your property over the next couple of years, when there's this sort of economic uncertainty right now, as long as you're investing on a long time horizon, to me, it makes complete sense.
Absolutely. And I think this advice is so much for real estate investors, but so much for beginning real estate investors. So I think the people with the most concern that I talk to about the next couple of years are people who don't need to be looking at things in the next couple of year time horizon. And they can also lock in that 30-year debt. So we buy enough houses. We're not locking in 30-year debt. Typically, we're locking in 5, 10, 15-year debt. And we're not nervous about that at all. It's not even a concern. But for somebody that's brand new and saying, oh, well, what if this happens or what if that happens? Well, lock in a 30-year mortgage on a property that you know is going to cash flow or that you're going to be able to handle the debt service, and you'll be in great shape. Like you said, interest rates could go up in the next short period of time. I know the Fed keeps talking we're going to raise rates 3 or 4 times, and then we're going to stop buying bonds, which is going to hurt the mortgage industry. But the people I see that affecting the most personally, and this is just me personally, this is not based on any information, are the beginning home buyers or the newbie buyers who can barely afford a house anyway. And if their rate goes up X amount, let's say 500 or 50 to 100 basis points, they can't afford a house anymore. But the person moving from California to Austin can afford that same house with a 5 or 6 or 7% interest rate, probably higher than it's going to go. So you point out so many good reasons why there's nothing to worry about right now, but there is something to worry about if you don't act right now. If you wait a year or 2 years, you might not be able to buy. I know you and David Green talk about this on the podcast sometimes, is, hey, right now you've got a great opportunity. Don't let it pass you by. Just out of curiosity, I know prices in Europe are much different than prices in America even. What's just a home in Amsterdam go for?
It's pretty expensive in Amsterdam. They have a housing shortage here in the Netherlands as well. I rent in Amsterdam. We moved here not knowing exactly how long we were going to live here. Still don't. We just got a furnished apartment, but we have a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in a nice part of town. And I would bet it would sell for like 700,000 or 800,000 euros. So it's really expensive, but mortgages here are extremely cheap. Like you would pay, I think it must be somehow subsidized by the government for first-time home buyers or something, because it's like 1 or 2%. It's extremely low. So something you would not see in the US, and often you don't have to put any money down. But honestly, there's all sorts of things going on in this market that make it not feasible for me to invest. So I'm still very bullish on the US housing market over the next 5-10 years. So it hasn't really been attractive to me to invest here, but yeah, you'd have to drop some coin for sure to get into this market.
Yeah. And the main reason I bring that up is people always talk about how expensive Austin has gotten, and really compared to a lot of other markets in the US, it has not, but compared to markets in other countries, it absolutely is not. So you're in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, essentially condo. How many square feet where you live?
I would guess like maybe 1,200. It's not, I mean, it's, it's like city living, it's a smaller place, at least compared to where I live in Denver. But yeah, it's like it's a super nice place, but it's definitely different. Price per square foot is definitely pretty high.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, while we've gotten expensive compared to what we were 10 years ago, I don't think we are anywhere near expensive in the scheme of things. So Dave,
yeah, it's interesting just because I see a lot of parallels between Austin and Denver as markets, just in terms of population growth, the types of jobs that are being created there, incomes rising, populations growing. And what I think the reality is that these markets are difficult to find cash flow right now, unless you're doing short-term rentals or rent by the room. And, it's certainly possible in Burr, but like off the MLS, it's very difficult to find something that's cash flowing. But you also see this environment right now where rent is going up very quickly. And you have to consider which markets the rent is going to keep going up over the long term. And it's cities like Denver and Austin that have really high demand and sustained high demand that I think are going to see rent growing and appreciation over the next, indefinitely. I don't know when it will end. I don't see a point where it will end at this point. I mean, there's always cycles in the market, so it will slow down, but like over the long run, I don't see why it would end. And I think that's what the main thing I advise people now to think about is, do you need cash flow right now? And if you don't, then bet on the strongest market you can find, because it's going to grow over the future. And I know it's tempting to look for a 7% cash on cash return, but that over a market that can produce that kind of return right now might not be great, as good in 10 years, even in terms of cash flow, as Austin or Denver, because rent is going to go up. And if you lock in that low interest rate now, your expenses are not going to go up at the same rate. So that's, people talk about it's expensive. It's all expensive, but it doesn't mean it's going to stop. And people always bet against San Francisco and New York and all this stuff, and they keep going up too. It's like the big cities where people want to live are going to keep going up.
Yeah. And you all talk a lot about, you've started talking a lot about this at BiggerPockets. Cash flow is great, but if you purely go after cash flow, you're probably not going to get as much appreciation. I think that's now more than ever. The markets you have to find where you actually can cash flow well just are not desirable markets. So they're not going to appreciate like an Austin or a Denver. At the same time, just to recap what you're saying, if you invest in Austin now and rent keeps going up at the rate it is, in 2 or 3 years, you're getting great cash flow and you've made $100,000 in appreciation, and it's exactly such a great place. And I think we get so caught up and I want to make money right now. And I think that's why crypto was so attractive to people. I'm going to put $1,000 in and next week it's going to be $10,000. And just look what happened there. It's right. 50% now or something.
Yeah. It's volatile. I mean, I invest in it, but I know it's gambling. It's fun. Yeah. But that's not like a strategy for me for retirement. That's for sure. But yeah, I think that, rent will slow down. Like it can't keep going up at this rate unless wages keep going up at a much higher rate. And I think with rising interest rates, we're going to see both of those things start to come back down to earth. But still, like, even if it grows at a normal rate, at normal rate for Austin's probably 5%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. Like, that compounds every single year. And if you're investing for 5-10 years, like, when you do need cash flow, when you do want to retire, you're going to be in a very good position. And you're probably going to be in a really strong market that has appreciated a lot. And that's why, I'm looking at other markets and new markets, but I like to balance them out. Like, I invest in Denver because I think it's going to be a great appreciation market. I think Austin is similar to that. And then I'm also looking for places where I can find cash flow because I am in a privileged position where, I've been doing this for a while and I can diversify a little bit. But I think both are good strategies. And people have, I'm glad that people are coming around to this idea, because for years I've been saying, like, you make more money from appreciation than cash flow. And it's true. And I think, like, until you are ready to retire, cash flow is not really that important, as long as you can service your debt, as long as you can pay for all of your expenses, pay down your loan, let the value of your property go up, and you're going to make a lot of money.
Absolutely. And you guys used to talk about this a lot on the BiggerPockets podcast, but Austin is a great example. So you can invest in Austin and get amazing appreciation. You go an hour outside of Austin to, let's say, a Killeen or a Temple, and you can still get great cash flow. So you can invest in one geographical area like Austin and get those same things. You say, hey, I want to buy this house in Austin, get this great appreciation. Then I want to buy one in Temple and get some cash flow and diversify a little bit, just the same way people diversify in stocks and bonds and crypto. And I do all of those things too. I didn't want to trash talk crypto too bad. I put some money in it, but it's gambling for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Fun money.
Have you wanted to be part of GoBundance, the tribe of millionaires, but just haven't hit that millionaire status yet? Well, now you can, not even being a millionaire, by joining our new program, GoBundance Emerge. My name's Jamie Gruber, creator of GoBundance Emerge and member of the GoBundance community. And now you can join. GoBundance.com/emerge. GoBundance.com/emerge. Use code Jordan for $100 off this 12-week goal-setting program and mastermind that'll propel you to being a whole life millionaire.
Yeah, exactly. But I really think I don't know if your listeners invest in the stock market as well, but when you think about the stock market, there are different classes of stock. You have growth stocks, you have value stocks, you have dividend stocks, and a growth stock is something that, or a blue chip stock, like, you have all these different ideas. So, like, I think about them sort of in similar terms in terms of real estate markets. Like, a blue chip market is probably going to be something like Seattle, or Austin is probably approaching that, where it's just consistently solid. It's going to keep going up. Like, it's not going anywhere. You're not going to all of a sudden see tons of people leaving Austin or, an economic crash. Like, this is a very rock solid economic market. Then, similar to a dividend stock, which is, if your listeners aren't familiar, is a stock that pays you cash. They give out some of their profits. I look at somewhere like Killeen or Temple as a dividend stock. But if you look at the stock market, dividend stocks don't go up in value as much. But as an investor, you start to balance these things over time and look for different opportunities based on what the market is giving, where you are in your investing career and in your life. And I really think that there isn't one right answer. There's different strategies. And, as you progress in your investing career, you should pursue all of them. But I don't see there's like one right or wrong as to like pick a market that is likely to appreciate it or is likely to generate cash flow.
Absolutely. And I like those analogies too, because I think you could equate the same thing to what happens with stock market during a downturn. All those stocks fall in value, but I'd say the blue chip stocks probably hold their value a little better than the growth stocks, the dividend stocks. And the same with real estate markets. Denver or Seattle or in Austin might fall in value, but it's going to recover quicker. It's going to hold value better, where like a Killeen or Columbus, Ohio, or, some of those markets that it had great cash flow and just took a beating in 2008 as far as values go. So you have to look at your real estate portfolio that way too, of how much can I afford to lose? So Dave, you've done a lot of real estate deals. Obviously you look at a ton of data around real estate. If you could tell newer investors one thing, what should they know before they get started investing in real estate?
I think one of the things that people overlook, and I don't know, can I ask how old you are?
I'm 33.
Okay, we're about the same age. I'm 34. So okay. I think that people of like our generation are all overly scarred by what happened in 2007 and 2008. And like, I'm one of those people, like we graduated college. It was a terrible job market. It was nuts. It was a really bad time to like start your economic life. And one of the things I think I like to remind people who are first because a lot of people our age are starting to buy homes right now for the first time. And I think what I like to remind people is what happened in 2007 is the equivalent of the 1929 stock market drop. Like that has happened one time in the history of the United States. There have been other times where the housing market has dropped in nominal terms. There are times when it is not doing well against inflation, but we have never seen anything remotely like that in the history of the United States. It was like a black swan event. And although the housing market is going up really rapidly and it cannot keep going up at this pace, the fundamentals of the housing market are much, much, much different than they were in 2007. And again, there is always risk in investing and things could go down temporarily, but like even people who invested right before the crash in 2007, if they held on to right now, would have earned a really good return on their investment. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like, think about things historically. It's hard because there's so much media about what's going on, but like, just go Google the history of the median home price in America over the last 100 years. And you'll see in the graph that like home prices in the United States, they don't really go down all that frequently. And when they do, they've always bounced back up and then some. So I think it gives me confidence to look at that sort of long-term trend. And hopefully to anyone listening to this, it will do the same.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're the same as me, talking to people about, hey, do you want to buy your first house? Or are you looking to buy your first investment? They say, oh, I'm waiting for the crash. I'm waiting for the next crash. Being our age, that's all we remember. And yeah. I always have to tell them, hey, I don't think it's coming. I'm not trying to sell you anything, but I think you might be waiting for a very long time.
Yeah. And the thing is like, if it crashes and like, I don't think it's going to crash. Could it go down 3 to 5% at some point in the next couple of years? Maybe. But like in the time it takes to crash, it could go up 10%. So like you could wait for a crash and it will, in that time, property values have gone up 10 or 15%, and then it crashes. And I'm doing air quotes for those who are listening, like quote unquote crashes down 5 or 10%, but like you'd still be better off if you bought it today than waiting. And I think this is like the mentality, expecting a crash. Again, for people our age, it makes sense just given our experiences. But logically, if you look at historical data and have any faith in that, which I do, you would see that it is unlikely to happen at that scale. Like, of course it could go down a little bit, but that kind of crash, accompanied with a huge recession, massive unemployment, credit tightening severely, all these things happening, construction companies going out of business. Like, that was a very unique set of economic circumstances that are just not present today.
Well, and you brought up a good point, construction companies going out of business because of that, because there's been such a lack of building over the last decade, which is a very long time. You might know the number better than me. We're how many million of homes behind what we need. So in Austin,
saying like 5 to 7 million is like the current estimate.
That's crazy.
Yeah. US, nationally.
Yeah. In Austin we're at 0.8 months of inventory right now. It might be down. It was trending down. It was trending up when we thought, we're going to relax a little bit. Maybe we'll get up to a month and a half, 2 months of inventory, which Dave knows this, but for anybody listening, 6+ months is a buyer's market. We're at 0.8 months. And we were up towards 1.1 and we could see the light, and then it started going back down again. I think we'll probably end up somewhere in the 0.7, 0.6 months here in the next month or two. There's just not enough houses for sale. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. And actually, despite rising interest rates, which normally you would expect would decrease buyer demand, it's actually gone up because people, like what we're talking about, are anticipating rates going up for the next few years probably, and it'll happen slowly. It won't stay at this pace, but we're seeing an increase in demand with a decrease in supply. Like, the next couple of months are going to be wild. We'll probably see housing prices continue at this torrid pace, at least for like another 3 to 6 months, I think.
Yeah. So if you're in Austin, pay attention to what happened last year. 2021, we had a massive run in the spring. Feels like we're going back there again. We'll never know until it's happened. But for all the reasons Dave's saying, probably buy now rather than wait 6 months. Should be a bad place to be.
Honestly, that's what I'm trying to do, is trying to buy stuff in the next, 3 to 4 months as much as I can. Then let's see what happens. It could still be good, but like, I feel like conditions are good right now, and past that, who knows? In today's economy, it's very unclear. I think the housing market is one of the clearest things, but things are changing rapidly, and I am trying, as a long-term investor, I see good buying conditions now. I'm going to act on that and then reassess as things change.
They say, make hay while the sun shines.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Got an opportunity now. So you've done quite a few deals too. Could you give us some advice on how to avoid a bad deal? So I know everybody's seen something they said, I should have known that. Is there anything that you would know? Maybe it's on passive investing or active investing, whichever works best for you.
So I think like people get into their head a little bit and over think about things. And I personally, my philosophy about real estate is to keep things as simple as possible. And I do this because I work full time. I have a job that I like and I'm passionate about. And I look for deals that are just simple. There's no like, I got to refinance this, or if I can add these 2 bedrooms, and then, then if rent goes up, like all these contingencies. Like, honestly, run a simple analysis, and if it pencils out, go for it. And unless you're a really experienced investor, but as a newbie, I really just think like, come up with a thesis. Like, what is your belief about investing? For me, I believe that the appreciation is going to be more important than cash flow, but I'm not willing to lose money on a deal. So I'm not going to take a negative cash on cash return, but I will take a 1% cash on cash return. I don't, that's fine for me. I'll take a 3% cash on cash return, anything like that, if I think it's in a really good market. And so I've create my own criteria, and once I find a house that fits that, I try my best not to overthink it. And just like, if it fits this criteria, I go for it. They call it like the buy box, Yep. And, to me, that's like the main focus. I think a lot of people get into these bad situations because they overcomplicate it. And, I'm not a house flipper because I think there's too much risk in it. Like, people all want to be a house flipper. They all want to do like the sexiest strategies. I'm the opposite. I want to do the boring stuff that just has been working for 50 years and is going to work for the next 50 years. So that's how I avoid bad deals.
I love that. I have a very similar mindset. I like boring and predictable. So
Totally.
I love that too. Have a buy box. That's probably the best advice you're ever going to hear on a podcast. Have a thesis or have a buy box and say, if it meets this criteria, and make it reasonable criteria. Your criteria, Dave, is very reasonable, but over time, rents are going to go up. Over time, the property is going to appreciate. You're buying for the long term. You're in a good spot. You don't have to make a certain thing happen to have it be a good investment.
Hey guys, this is Jordan Moorhead here, and I wanted to ask if you could do a huge favor for me. If you could go leave a review for this podcast wherever you're listening to it, that would really help me get this into the hands of other people that are interested in information about Austin real estate investing, and I'd be able to help more people. Thanks, guys.
Totally. Awesome. Yeah. And I think like people, it's like, oh, I got to get this 8% return, or like, oh, if I do this, it will be a 14% return. But like, the difference between getting a 12% return and a 14% return is like a lot of your time and effort. And like, for me, that's just not worth it. I would rather take the 12% return and know I'm going to get that. I'm going to, think about this property for 5 or 10 hours in the entire year. Like that's what I want. I don't want something where people are, I'm calling and thinking about this thing constantly just for another 1 or 2% return. It's not worth it to me.
Yeah. What's your time worth? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Dave, we've talked a lot about your job. Obviously you really like your job, and I love that. I think so many people want to get out of a job where maybe they should just go find a different job and then also invest in real estate. But what's next for you? What are your long-term goals, and what's your real estate vision for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for me, I don't plan on retiring anytime soon. I'll stay at BiggerPockets as long as they'll have me. But for me, I am looking to get into some new markets just because Denver is pretty expensive. I still believe in Denver and will invest there when I can. But I see a lot of activity in the Sun Belt. So Texas obviously is included there. And I'm just interested in diversifying, and that not just from a financial perspective, just from like a personal interest and challenge to yourself, like investing somewhere else. So that's what I'm really going to be focusing on for the next year or two. And then I'm also just like really starting to learn about, and I'm very interested in this new generation of like manufactured homes. And I think given what we've talked about with the housing shortage and all this stuff, I'm really interested in like doing a little bit of, I said, I want to keep things simple, but one caveat to that is I would be interested in buying some land and trying to find a partner at some of these manufactured homes, because they're awesome. They're really cool, good quality homes, and could provide good entry-level housing in markets that really need them. And so that's something I'm going to be looking into as well.
Are you referring to modular housing?
Yeah, there's a couple different options. Like there's a bunch of modular housing, or just like new versions of basically like, I don't want to call them like trailers, but like similar idea, it's like manufactured homes, but like super high quality, good finishes, solid places, like it makes sense to me given the cost of construction right now is insane. Like it seems not feasible to meet the demand, to meet the need of the nation for housing using using traditional construction. It just doesn't seem reasonable to me. So I am really interested in like these manufactured homes. And to your point, like modular homes are a really cool option because they're manufactured, but you can customize them and it feels like your own home, and it doesn't feel like you're living in like a cookie cutter thing. And the technology is just advancing really rapidly. So this is more of like a 3 to 10 year. This is not in the immediate future, but I've been doing a lot of research in it. I'm excited about it. So it's something I'll be thinking about in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay in touch. I know a couple guys here in Austin working on opening a factory for modular housing for the exact reason. It's expensive to build. It's super expensive to build. And another thing is it's very slow. It's very slow. They're not very energy efficient. They're just stick-built homes. It's hard to build them energy efficient. And I know we're all trying to be energy efficient, and I think there's a good reason for that, but they take forever. And they can get these modular houses once they're on site, set up in a matter of days. So they have the foundation, they pop the house in. It's
crazy. Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm seeing some buddies in Denver who are considering, they're contractors, in the trades. People are considering like just specializing in this, like putting up these modular homes. Like they take the delivery and put them up in, like you said, 2 weeks, 4 weeks to put, they run the gamut. There's some that can be put up in a week, and then there's 3,000 square foot modular homes that could be, that are crazy. So it really runs the gamut, but I think it's a trend that is likely to continue. So good luck to your friends. I think it's a really smart industry to be getting into right now.
It's hard to get into. It's harder than you would think. Another thing we didn't talk about is modular ADUs. So building these ADUs or accessory dwelling units that are modular, and they can do the site prep. They can just come in and pop down a 2-bedroom, 1-bath ADU. In Denver, that's popular, I'm sure. Austin really needs more housing, so they're trying to increase density. Well, awesome. Yeah. No, I think those are great ideas.
They are making that easier in Denver because I looked into this for years, honestly. I was like looking for lots specifically where you could pop an ADU onto it. And the zoning is not, there's places where you can do it, but, cities like Denver and Austin need to start allowing more density and allowing for these types of creative solutions. Everyone wins, like there's no downside to it. Parking, whatever, it's like the complaint people have, but like people would be happy to have, more homes. So yeah, I think again, like all sorts of modular types of prefab construction is going to be a huge thing in the next few years.
Yeah. And I would argue that parking will probably be less and less of a concern too, as we have all these robo taxis that are going to be rolling around. I know there's so many of the Tesla leases that they're saying, hey, we want them back in 5 years and you can't keep it. We're going to make it a robo taxi. So
totally. Yeah. It's crazy. And come to Amsterdam. We don't have cars anywhere here.
Yeah.
But I've seen them in Denver actually, where they have modular, it sits on top of a 2-story garage. So like even in a city where that's going to require you to add parking, you can do that. And they're cool. They're really cool. I stayed in one in Airbnb last time I was back in Denver for work, and it was extremely nice place. Like I would live there for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. There's so many cool things coming out with 3D printing, modular housing, manufactured housing. They are really nice. So it's cool to have that part of what you're interested in doing here in the future. Dave, what is your favorite business or mindset book? Obviously, you work for a publisher, but you have a favorite book that you like to recommend to people?
Yeah. So there's a book called Thinking in Bets. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have. I have it. I've not read it.
Yeah. Annie Duke. She's a very smart woman and former, maybe still professional poker player. But her whole idea about decision-making, I think is amazing. Just thinking about her whole concept is about, divorcing decision-making from outcome, so like you can make a great decision and through no fault of your own, it could turn out really poorly for you. And that's okay. And you have to like be proud of your decision and not necessarily the outcome. And just vice versa, you can make horrible decisions and you can get really lucky. And I just really like her way of focusing on the decision and like what you can control and not beating yourself up if you make a good decision and it doesn't go well. I think that's really helped me a lot in my life. So I highly recommend the book.
Awesome. Yeah. Thinking in Bets. And we will have that in the show notes for everybody. Dave, what's the best way people can get a hold of you?
So on Instagram is the best way to get a hold of me. Okay. I am at the Data Deli. It's an absurd Instagram account, but I share a lot of housing market data and information about investing. But I am also a huge sandwich enthusiast. I love eating. So I sprinkle in some food commentary as well. That's
awesome. Are there great sandwiches there in Amsterdam?
Honestly, no. They're like obsessed with sandwiches here. Like every store, like in the window is sandwiches, but they're like those crappy, like they're on like a little like hamburger bun, you know, and it's like one slice of meat. I hate it. Like I need an American sandwich that's like 2,000 calories and it's like this big, you know, it's like, it's going to knock you out for a few hours. That's what I want. And I found like one or two places, but it's pretty hard to find.
Well, I hope that you find something good here soon that satisfies that thirst. Speaking of, our most important question here on the podcast is, what is your favorite restaurant in Austin? Speaking of food.
Actually, right before I joined BiggerPockets, my now fiance and I went to Austin as like a trip to celebrate. And we paid a middle schooler to wait in line for us for 2 hours at La Barbecue and had incredible barbecue. And I know there's a big debate in Austin about the best place. That's the only one I've been to, but it was awesome. We had a great experience there. So that was probably my favorite.
Yeah, La Barbecue is amazing. It's on Cesar Chavez. Be prepared to wait a little bit unless you just show up at the perfect right time. But I've never heard anybody paying a middle schooler for 2 hours. Was he already in line?
I think they were like, they stopped it. They like shut it down. But like we found this kid. I don't even know how I found it, but he was just like, I'll wait in line for you and I'll text you when I'm like 15 minutes from the start. So I paid him like, I don't know, it was like $25 or something.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I know. And like, he like was right in line, texted him. I found him and I was like, hey, what's up, man? And he was like, you know, middle schooler. He was like way too cool to even talk to me. I was like, you got the money? And I was like, yeah, I gave him the cash and just got in line. And I think, you know, people were probably very resentful of that and they shut it down. So they're no longer possible, but it was a funny story.
Well, now it would be $75 with inflation too. $25 bucks is not going to cut it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure a pound of brisket's like $100 now too.
Oh yeah. It's getting expensive. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. We really appreciate having you on here. Right before I was interviewing Dave here, I was listening to his BiggerPockets Daily podcast. Episode 435 is all about Austin. If you want to hear more from Dave, Dave's all over the different BiggerPockets podcasts, and he's at the Data Deli on Instagram.
That's right. Thanks so much for having me, Jordan.
Yeah, thank you, and have a great day.